It was protection. It was permission to show up. Clarissa unsurprisingly didn't take it well. Through her lawyer, she filed a notice of protest. Through her voice, she filed something uglier. She's poisoning him, Clarissa claimed in a voicemail to my mother. She wants to make me look like a bad mother. She's manipulating everyone. But the truth was simpler. I wasn't saying anything. I wasn't calling Eli. I wasn't answering his texts. I followed the court order too. The letter out of respect for the system, out of fear she'd twist even a smile into ammunition. Clarissa, of course, went further. She took Eli's phone, disabled his FaceTime, told him I was busy, overwhelmed, tired of being used, projection dressed as explanation. Then one night, my iPad pinged with a video request from an old email address I'd helped Eli set up years ago for school. I hesitated for a breath, then answered. The screen flickered, and there he was. Did he whispered, face lit only by the glow under his blanket. His eyes were wide and wet, his voice trembling. Are you mad at me? The breath caught in my throat. No, baby, I said gently. Never. They said you didn't want to talk to me, that you were too busy, that you were trying to take me away to hurt Mom. I closed my eyes for a second. None of that is true. Then why is everyone so angry? He asked. Why do they hate you? I couldn't answer. Not the way he wanted. So I said the only thing I could that didn't feel like a lie. Sometimes people get scared when someone finally says enough. And scared people say mean things. He sniffled. I miss you. I miss cherry slushies and dinosaur socks and the way you always knew what I was thinking. My chest ached. I miss you too. The screen dimmed slightly as he adjusted. Can I still love both of you? Yes, I said, but I need you to know that. No matter what they say about me, what matters is what you know to be true. He nodded slowly. I know you're my safe place. And, just like that, the call ended. Abrupt mid-tier. I stared at the screen long after it went black. The next morning, a letter was tucked into my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. The envelope was thin. No apology inside. No acknowledgement of the pain. The silence, the complicity. Just a single-page note folded neatly like it. Deserved the respect she hadn't given me. Mara, you've taken things too far. I hope you realize how much embarrassment you've brought to this family. This could have been handled quietly with grace the way real families do. Instead, you've chosen exposure, shame, and distance. You've made us look like fools. Mom, I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand, but because I couldn't believe she still thought appearance was the enemy. I walked into the kitchen, the letter dangling from my fingertips like it was on fire. I laid it flat on the table and stared at the last line. You've made us look like fools. No, I thought I've only just begun to be seen. I pulled a sticky note from the drawer and scribbled 4 words. Beneath her letter. I found my face, then folded the page and tucked it into the folder labeled evidence, emotional manipulation. Not for court, not for lawyers, for me. Because truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, personal, reclaiming. That day, I cleaned the guest room. I washed Eli's dinosaur blanket and set it on the bed, smoothing the edges like a promise. Eli arrived with 1 duffel bag and a pair of oversized headphones hanging around his neck. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just stepped over the threshold like someone crossing a border, unsure if he was being welcomed or detained. Hey, kiddo, I said, keeping my voice soft. You hungry? He shrugged, staring at the floor. I didn't press, just pointed to the guest room, the one I'd spent all day preparing, the one that smelled faintly of lavender and warm cotton. He nodded and walked in without a word. The door didn't close, but it didn't quite stay open either. From the hallway I watched him sit on the bed. His small hands clutched the old dinosaur blanket I'd left folded at the foot. I hadn't seen it in years. It still had the faint stitched patch where he'd once caught it on a fence during a backyard adventure. He ran his fingers over that spot like he was checking to make sure it was still real. That night he slept curled under that blanket, head barely peeking out, arms wrapped tight around it like it could explain the world to him. I stood outside his door for a long time, listening to his breathing, shallow, measured, not restful, not yet. In the mornings, I made French toast the way he liked, sliced diagonally, no syrup, just powdered sugar. He didn't eat much, but he watched me cook. In the afternoons, we sat on the porch and listened to the wind, the silence between us less heavy each day. I didn't ask questions. I didn't push. I just showed up. On day 4, he spoke. "You still have the slushy cups?" I looked up from my book, surprised. "The cherry ones?" He nodded. I smiled. "Back of the cabinet behind the holiday mugs. Want one?" He hesitated, then said, "Maybe later." Later came sooner than I expected. That afternoon, he padded into the kitchen holding the green cup with the cracked lid. "You kept them?" "Of course I did," I said. "You never forget your classics." He gave me a small crooked grin, the kind that flickers and vanishes like a nervous firefly, but it was there. That night, we watched an old dinosaur documentary. He leaned into my side for the first time. When the narrator said that some species had feathers, he looked up and whispered, "I still don't believe that part." "I don't either," I said. "Some things are just better with scales." It was the kind of moment that feels small but rebuilds something enormous. Then on the 6th night, after brushing his teeth and lining up his dinosaur figurines along the windowsill, he stood in the hallway holding his blanket like armor. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Anything." He hesitated, eyes fixed on the floor. "Did you leave us because of money?" My heart sank. "What?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Mom said you didn't want to be around anymore, that you picked lawyers over family, that you didn't love us enough to stay." I knelt down so we were eye level. "Eli, look at me." He did slowly like he was bracing for more hurt. "That's not true," I said. "I never left you. I never wanted to be away from you. I fought for the chance to be here with you, and I will never stop fighting for that." "But why did she say that?" he whispered. I shook my head. "Sometimes when people are scared, they say things that hurt. They try to explain the world in ways that make them feel better, even if it isn't fair. And sometimes they forget how much the truth matters." His lips trembled and he blinked hard. I didn't believe her. "Not really. I didn't know what to do." "You don't have to do anything," I said, pulling him into a hug. "Just be here. Just be you." He clung to me, small fingers digging into my back like he was anchoring himself to something that wouldn't drift away. That night, he slept without the blanket over his face. The knock on my door was sharp. 3 short raps, impatient and insistent. I knew that rhythm. I didn't need to look through the peephole. When I opened it, my mother stood on the porch, flanked by my father, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She wore her church blazer, and that expression she used when disappointed in the world's failure to behave as she wished. "We need to talk," she said without greeting. I stepped aside without a word, letting them enter. The living room felt suddenly smaller, like their presence bent the walls inward. "You could have called," I said evenly. "We shouldn't have to," she snapped. "This is ridiculous, Mara. You've taken this too far." Dad glanced toward the hallway, where a faint light from Eli's room spilled out. "Is he here?" "Yes," I replied, "and he's safe." My mother's jaw tightened. Safe? With all this legal nonsense and court orders, with the gossip this has stirred up. People are talking, Mara. They think our family is fractured. "Our family is fractured," I said. "And it didn't start with court filings. It started when you decided silence was more convenient than truth." She waved that off. "You're punishing your sister." "I'm holding her accountable. She's his mother, and I'm the one who's been feeding him, dressing him, comforting him when he cries himself to sleep," I said. "Where was she then?" Mom stepped closer, eyes glinting. "You're stealing her child." I blinked. What? You're taking him from her, she said. From his mother, from his real family. My breath caught. And I'm not real. Is that it? You know what I mean? No, I said I don't. Clarify it for me. Dad finally spoke, voice low. Margaret, maybe we should sit down in. She ignored him. This isn't what families do, Mara. We don't drag each other through the mud. We don't turn children into pawns. You're turning Eli against her. I walked to the kitchen drawer, pulled out the recorder, and tapped play. Clarissa's voice filled the room, sharp, venomous, unmistakably. Hers. If she goes public with this, I swear I'll make sure no one ever loans. Her assent again. She'll regret crossing me. She always has. Silence. The tape ended. I looked at my parents. They didn't speak. Mom's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Dad's eyes dropped to the floor. This is who you're defending, I said. This is who you think should have full access to a child. She was angry. Mom said finally. She didn't mean it. She meant it enough to say it. To threaten me, and you didn't say a word when she did. Neither of you. Footsteps padded into the room behind us. I turned and saw Eli barefoot in his pajamas holding his stuffed triceratops. He looked from me to my parents, his face pale. Were you yelling? He asked. No, honey, I said gently. Just talking. He looked at my mother, then at me. Am I the reason everyone's mad? The room froze. No, I said instantly, kneeling to meet his eyes. Absolutely not. But you're fighting because of me. I pulled him into my arms. No, Eli, we're fighting because some people forgot what love is supposed to look like. But you're the reason I'm still standing. His grip on me tightened. I don't want to go back, he whispered. You don't have to, I said. Behind me, I heard my mother sniff. Whether it was guilt or frustration, I didn't know. I didn't care. She and Dad left a few minutes later. Without another word. I closed the door behind them and locked it, not out of fear, but finality. The morning of Eli's 11th birthday began with pancakes shaped like dinosaurs and a handmade card waiting on his plate. I'd found a stencil online and stayed up past midnight tracing every letter of Happy Birthday, Eli. You're Rosamund. Green glitter glue. He grinned when he saw it, a smile slow and steady like sunshine breaking through clouds. Do you think anyone else will come? He asked, voice small. I ruffled his hair. You'll see. We didn't have a venue or a balloon arch or a magician, but we had something more enduring, intentional love. By noon, 2 folding tables were set under a rented canopy in the backyard. My neighbor, Mrs. Halprin, brought extra lawn chairs and a cooler full of Capri Sun. Tessa showed up with handmade banners that read Team Eli and dinosaur cupcake toppers. No RSVP cards, no velvet ropes, just community. The kids trickled in, 5 of them from school, a couple from the neighborhood, and 1 from Eli's old soccer team. I stood outside the ballroom, gift in hand, watching strangers toast under chandeliers paid for with my credit. The security guard didn't recognize my name because my family made sure it was erased. 10 years of cosigns silent. Support, and every sacrifice they asked for, and now I was nothing but a forgotten RSVP. But what they didn't know is that this night wasn't my downfall. It was my awakening. They'd mistaken my silence for consent, my generosity for weakness. Tonight, I stopped begging to belong. Tonight, I took my name back. The valet barely glanced at me as he took my keys, eyes darting toward the line of luxury SUVs behind my modest sedan. I clutched the wrapped gift like a fragile truth, the bright green bow trembling slightly under my fingers. The Fairmont Hotel loomed ahead, its grand entrance dripping in golden light and curated laughter. I paused just before the red carpet, watching guests swirl through the doors, sequins, tuxedos, monogrammed baby carriers. I didn't recognize a single face. Inside, someone laughed too. Loudly. A flash of gold heels, champagne flutes glinted beneath a crystal chandelier. My nephew Eli was turning 10, and I'd spent 2 months saving for the remotech controlled helicopter he'd pointed to in a dog-eared catalog. I'd pictured the moment he'd tear open the wrapping paper, his eyes lighting up. That imagined smile had carried me through the exhaustion of parent-teacher conferences and late-night grading. Now the weight of the box in my hands felt suddenly foolish. Sorry, Mom. A hand went up, blocking my path. The security guard was polite but firm, his eyes flicking toward a clipboard. This is a private event, guests only. I'm family, I said, the words dry in my throat. I'm Mara Quinn, Eli's aunt. He scanned the list. You're not on here. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the music like a blade dipped in honey. Mara. Clarissa stood beneath the party costs. I stared at it for a long time, heart tightening, not from the amount, but from the assumption, like a patch on a wound they didn't want to see, like someone had told him, make it right. Quietly, as if money could repair years of eraser. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just slipped the check back into the envelope, resealed it with a fresh strip of tape, and mailed it back that same afternoon. No note, no explanation, just silence. Let them wonder why. That week, I almost let myself breathe. Eli's laughter lingered in the corners of the house, and his drawings began appearing on the fridge again. He wrote Dinosaur HQ on his bedroom door and asked if we could build a fort in the living room on Friday. I said yes before he even finished the question. Then, Tessa called. She's filed a counter-petition, she said. No preamble. I froze. Clarissa. Yes. Emergency motion for reinstatement of primary custody. Claims emotional manipulation, undue influence, and parental alienation. I sank into the kitchen chair, suddenly cold. She's saying I'm brainwashing him. Tessa sighed. Essentially, she's also added a claim that you're intentionally disrupting maternal bonding. Her words. I rubbed my temples. Of course she did. She also attached a character reference from your mother, Tessa added gently. Of course she did. The hearing was scheduled for Friday. Eli noticed the shift in my mood, but I didn't tell him. Why? I just kept showing up, making grilled cheese the way he liked, leaving sticky notes in his lunchbox. I kept being steady and scared. The courtroom felt colder this time. Clarissa wore navy, hair pulled back into something severe. Her lawyer opened with practiced outrage. My client has been denied access to her son under the guise of legal procedure, but the emotional damage is immediate and dangerous. Miss Quinn is manipulating Eli, positioning herself as the sole provider of comfort and care, isolating him from his mother without cause. Tessa stood calmly. Your Honor, we have already established financial misconduct, emotional instability, and neglectful oversight of the child's needs. In response to the court's request for caregiving evidence, Ms. Fields provided spa bills, luxury purchases, and a single week of meal plans, all for herself. She passed the judge a folder. In contrast, we offer school attendance reports since Eli has been in Ms. Quinn's care. No tardies. Improved test scores, and a statement from Eli's teacher indicating marked improvement in behavior and focus. Clarissa flinched barely. Tessa continued, Eli has expressed to a court-appointed counselor that he feels safe and calm in Ms. Quinn's home. He said, she listens to me and doesn't yell when I spill things. The judge nodded once, expression unreadable. I'll take this under advisement. We were dismissed. I left the courthouse with my breath locked in my chest. 2 days later, the order arrived. Petition denied. Full guardianship remains with Mara Quinn. I didn't jump, didn't cheer, just folded the document and placed it in the folder marked custody. Later that night, while Eli was asleep, under a blanket of drawn dinosaurs and coloring pages, I sat in the living room and allowed myself to feel the weight of it all. Not the victory, but the cost. I'd won something precious, but I had lost something too. A family that never truly saw me. A mother who weaponized disappointment. A sister who forged my name, then blamed me for reading it aloud. A past version of myself who believed that if you gave enough, You became indispensable. I knew better now. You don't earn love by erasing yourself. You earn peace by finally drawing the line. Eli stirred in his sleep, murmuring something about pterodactyls and treasure maps. I smiled, leaned back into the couch, and whispered to no one, I'm not invisible anymore. Because the revolution wasn't just about who got to hold the child. It was about who finally held herself. The conference room at Tessa's office had been rearranged. Folding chairs in a circle, a pot of lukewarm coffee in the center, a plate of half-eaten cookies off to the side. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even particularly comfortable, but it was safe. And that lately was rare enough to feel sacred. 5 women sat with me that day. Each held their own quiet ache. Elena had co-signed on her niece's student loans, which spiraled into 5 figures of debt and 2 eviction notices. Ruth's adult son had drained her retirement through a temporary business venture. Gloria, the oldest of us, was still receiving bills from accounts she never opened but had trusted someone else to manage. Tessa introduced the session as informal peer support, but we knew what it really was, unburdening in community, stitching old seams with steady hands. When it was my turn, I kept it brief. I told them about the party, the erasure, the forged signatures, the courtroom, the dinosaur blanket. They didn't gasp or interrupt. They just nodded. The kind of nod that says, I know. I've lived it. Then the woman beside me, Lorna, cleared her throat. She hadn't spoken much until then. Silver hair, sharp eyes, and a quiet elegance. She looked at me for a long moment before she said, You're Margaret's daughter, aren't you? I blinked. You know my mom? She smiled gently. Knew. We taught together in the late 8s. She was smart, sharp. She loved Clarissa more than life itself. My stomach nodded. I remember once at a staff potluck, Lorna continued, Your mother said something that stuck with me. Someone had asked how her daughters were doing. She said, Clarissa's my star. She's everything I ever hoped for. Mara, well, she's reliable. The word sat heavy in the room. Lorna looked down at her hands. I don't share this to hurt you, only to say, I think sometimes people choose their favorite mirrors, the ones that reflect back what they want to see. And when a mirror shows them something uncomfortable, they look away. I nodded slowly, not out of shock, but recognition. It made sense now. The quiet omissions, the never quite phrased praise, the we're so proud of you that only ever came when I was invisible. I wasn't angry, not anymore, just tired. Because the love I'd worked so hard to keep alive, the one I'd thought was unconditional, it had always come with terms, with strings, with rules I didn't write, but was expected to obey. You. Okay? Ruth asked, voice soft. Yeah, I said, just realizing that I spent a lot of time being reliable, hoping one day that would mean being loved. Gloria leaned in. They made you feel disposable because you were dependable. That's not your fault. I looked around the circle and felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not validation, visibility. By mid-fall, Clarissa was gone. No official goodbye, no final confrontation, just silence and a moving truck that appeared. One morning, loading up her things while a neighbor snapped pictures from across the street. Rumors floated through the grapevine. Tennessee, maybe Florida, a new job, a new apartment, maybe even a new version of herself. But no one really knew. And for once, I didn't care to chase the details. Life in her absence became a quieter thing. Not empty, just softer. Eli and I fell into a rhythm that didn't need explanation. Mornings started with cereal and shared comics at the kitchen table. Evenings meant card games, movie marathons, and bedtime stories that always included at least one dinosaur. He started calling the guest room his room without hesitation. I didn't correct him. On Sundays, we'd walk to the farmer's market, and he'd point out every dog that passed like it was a celebrity sighting. He stopped asking when he'd have to go back. Stopped flinching at every phone buzz, stopped looking over his shoulder. One Evening, I returned home from a parent-teacher meeting to find him at his small desk, hunched over something with deep focus. He didn't hear me at first. His tongue was peeking out from the corner of his mouth, a sure sign of concentration. I leaned in the doorway, just watching. When he noticed me, he quickly covered whatever he'd been working on with his arm. "You weren't supposed to see yet," he said, cheeks flushed. I smiled. "Okay, I'll pretend I didn't." He nodded, satisfied. The next morning, when I came in to collect laundry, I found it. Sitting on the corner of his desk was a small photo frame, cheap plastic, slightly crooked. Inside was a picture of the two of us from his birthday party. I was mid-laugh, holding the green helicopter. He was grinning, frosting on his chin. Beneath the photo, in blocky letters written with a silver marker, was a single line, "Family is who stays." I sat down in his desk chair and let the words settle. Not because they were profound, though they were, but because they were his and they were true. For so long I'd believed family was about blood, history, obligation, that loving harder would make me indispensable, that giving endlessly would earn me permanence. But now, with that little frame catching the morning light, I understood something simpler. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who stays when it would have been easier to leave. And finally, I wasn't the one left behind. I was home. Archway, framed by lavender uplighting. Her satin gown draped perfectly, her hair pulled back in a knot that likely cost more than my monthly rent. She moved toward me slowly, like I might evaporate if approached too quickly. "I didn't know you were coming," she said, lips stretched into a practiced smile. "IRFPD," I said twice. "Oh," her head tilted. "We must have missed that. But it's such a small gathering this year. Just immediate family, you know." I looked past her shoulder into the ballroom. A string quartet played. Something elegant. At least 300 people milled about. Colleagues, acquaintances, people in gowns and heels I'd never seen before. Small. My gaze returned to her face. "I'm Eli's aunt," I said again, quieter this time. Clarissa's smile faltered just a breath, then returned stronger. She reached out and touched my arm, her manicured nails brushing my coat sleeve like she was dusting off an inconvenience. "You understand," she said softly, as if I were a child. Misunderstanding a rule. I didn't, but I nodded anyway, the way I always had. Behind her, I saw my parents laughing near the cake table, a towering confection adorned with edible stars. A magician spun a card trick for a group of children in designer shoes. Every detail had been curated. Every corner gleamed with excess. Clarissa leaned in, her voice low and private. "You know how sensitive Eli is. We didn't want to overwhelm him." I stared at her, feeling my cheeks heat, right? Because 300 guests, a live string quartet, and a chandelier the size of my car is low pressure. Her eyes flickered. Maybe with guilt, maybe with annoyance, but she didn't reply. Instead, she gave me a squeeze on the shoulder like she was comforting me at a funeral. "Next time." "Okay." I stepped back, one hand tightening around the gift, the bow crinkled beneath my palm. Without another word, I turned and walked away. The sound of celebration muffled by the heavy doors closing behind me. The silence in the car was thicker than the music echoing from the ballroom. I sat motionless, hands resting on the unopened gift in my lap. The paper had creased from my grip, the bow slightly flattened. I stared through the windshield, watching the silhouettes of people who hadn't thought to ask about me. Clarissa moved like a hostess from a magazine spread, smiling, elegant, adored. My parents flanked her at the cake table, clinking champagne glasses, proud and present. I wasn't just uninvited. I'd been erased. The irony stung. I had been the one to co-sign Clarissa's student loans when she didn't qualify on her own. I covered the down payment on her first apartment when our parents said she was too young to carry that kind of debt. When Eli was born and Clarissa was still in grad school, I stepped in. Diapers, doctor bills, formula. Just until she finishes her program, Mom said. But the program somehow extended through photography classes in Greece and wellness retreats in Sedona. Then came summer camps, private tutors, extracurriculars. She just needs a little help getting her footing. Dad had insisted. That footing seemed to stretch endlessly while I clipped coupons and picked up extra tutoring hours just to stay above water. Clarissa was always in transition, and I was always the bridge. I leaned back and closed my eyes. A memory surfaced. Mom in the kitchen slicing fruit, saying, we can't put this on Clarissa. She's already got so much on her plate. Mara, you've always been steady. I had mistaken it for a compliment, but tonight it echoed like a verdict. I wasn't chosen because I was valued. I was chosen because I was useful. A knock startled me. I looked up to see a young hotel staffer, barely out of college, judging by the nervous energy, standing beside my car window. He held a clipboard. Miss Quinn? I rolled the window down halfway. Yes. He leaned in slightly, eyes darting behind him. I probably shouldn't say this, but I just wanted to let you know. Your name was originally on the list. I stared at him frozen. I saw it when I was printing the earlier version this morning, he continued, voice low. Then about an hour before the event, someone came down and made corrections. Your name was crossed out manually. Inkpen. My pulse thudded. Who made the change? I don't know her name. Blonde, designer heels. Kind of intense. Clarissa. Thank you, I said softly. He hesitated. Like he wanted to say more, then nodded and walked away. I sat still for a moment longer, the betrayal curled tighter in my chest. Clarissa hadn't just forgotten me. She had removed me. Deliberately, premeditated, like pruning an unsightly branch from a family tree. I unlocked my phone, scrolled through contacts until I found Toby's name. He wasn't just my financial advisor. He was the only person who knew how tangled my accounts were with Clarissa's. When he picked up on the second ring, I didn't bother with greetings. I need you to freeze every joint or co-signed account tied to my name. All of them. Effective immediately. There was a pause. Mara, are you okay? No, I said, but I'm finally done pretending I am. He didn't ask for details, just started typing. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds, but it didn't warm me. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee gone cold beside my laptop, browser tabs open like wounds, one for each financial institution I'd ever touched. I hadn't slept, not really, just drifted between memories and disbelief. What had started as a request to freeze a few accounts was now a full-blown audit of my generosity, my gullibility, my past. I started with the known, one credit card. We'd opened together years ago, meant only to build Clarissa's credit, and I hadn't used it in over 5 years. The balance $6,700. Recent charges included designer shoes, meal delivery services, and a weekend stay at a boutique in Soma. The statement date was last week. Next came a card I didn't even remember agreeing to, but the application had my name, my address, and an old email I hadn't used in years. This one carried a balance of $11,300 with recurring charges for a high-end gym, a skincare subscription, and a Wine of the Month club. My stomach tightened. Then came the third card. This one hurt more. Not because of the amount, but the timeline. $2,000 racked up in just the last 2 weeks. Dinner at a steakhouse I'd never heard of. Jewelry. A down payment at a spa retreat in Arizona. The application date, 4 months ago. I clicked deeper into the account profile and saw it. My name again, but the mailing address listed as Clarissa's. That wasn't the worst of it. Beneath the list of linked accounts sat one final section, loans. There it was. A personal loan, $42,000 opened 18 months ago. The borrower, Clarissa Fields. The co-signer, me, except I didn't remember signing anything. I clicked on the loan details. The repayments were irregular, sometimes missed entirely. Interest had ballooned. The loan was now closer to $48,000. I scanned the document section and saw a Blurry upload labeled signature authorization form. I opened it. There. It was my name in swooping cursive, except it wasn't my handwriting. Not even close. A strange calm overtook me, the kind that arrives just before a thunderstorm. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, letting the truth soak in. This wasn't some forgotten agreement or a miscommunication. This was intentional, calculated. Clarissa had used my name like a spare key, one she didn't bother returning because she assumed I'd never changed. The locks. The sense of betrayal wasn't sharp. It was dull, slow, like a paper cut. You only notice when lemon juice hits it. All those years I thought I was helping, I'd been handing her the tools to dig a hole under me. And she'd kept digging. I checked the most recent transaction on the second credit card. 2 weeks ago, a payment at a baby boutique in Nashville. That's when it hit me. She was still using my name even after everything. Even after freezing accounts, she'd found another path, another crack to slip through. I stared at the spreadsheet I'd been building. A patchwork of bank names, charges, login, timestamps. I'd started it just to track the chaos. Now it looked like a crime scene. Line after line of evidence each one whispering the same thing. You were too trusting. My reflection in the laptop screen was pale, but my eyes looked different. Not scared, not broken, ready. I didn't bother with small talk when Tessa picked up. You free today? I asked. Something's wrong and I need your eyes on it. 3 hours later, we were seated in her office, sunlight pouring through high windows, stacks of family law folders lining the edge of her desk. Tessa Nguyen had been a friend in college, and later my quiet savior during my parents' messy will dispute years ago. She didn't blink at drama. She dissected it. I slid my laptop toward her already, open to the spreadsheet and evidence folders. Clarissa's been using my name, I said, and not just casually. This is planned. Tessa read silently for several minutes, her brows tightened. This isn't just sloppy borrowing, she said. This is fraud. Possibly identity theft, depending on how she accessed these accounts. She opened the scanned loan authorization and zoomed in. This is supposed to be your signature. I nodded. She tilted the screen toward me. Do you see the loop in the queue? That's not your handwriting. And look at the pen pressure. It's someone trying to mimic, not match. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, pulling metadata from the file. Look. Here. Uploaded via mobile 2 days after the account was opened. That's odd. Normally banks require originals for signatures unless someone calls in a special exception. I froze. Clarissa knew I'd once done that for Mom's insurance. She used that as a blueprint. Tessa kept digging. What's this email? Address tied to the second credit card? mquinn.corregmail.com. That's not your primary. No, I said slowly. I've never seen that. Tessa tapped into the linked accounts. It was used to verify the identity before activation. Whoever created it used your birth date and last 4 of your SSN. That means someone had full access to your personal data. A chill ran up my spine. Clarissa wouldn't know all of that without help. Tessa nodded slowly. You think someone else fed it to her? I don't think. I inhaled sharply. I know who would. My mother. She was the only person other than me who still had a physical copy of my social security card, old utility bills, and tax forms from years ago when we briefly lived together after Dad's first stroke. She helped me reorganize my files, or so I thought. I reached into the folder I'd brought and pulled out a printed copy of one of the forged authorization forms. I hadn't looked too closely before. Now, under fluorescent lights and Tessa's keen gaze, I did. The M in Mara was overly curved, and the Q had a small heart-like flourish I hadn't used since high school, but someone else had. I remembered a birthday card from Mom when I turned 17. To my sweet girl. Always steady, always giving. Love, Mom. The signature, the same heart-shaped Q. Tessa looked up at me. You okay? No, I said, but I'm no longer confused. It wasn't just Clarissa who had betrayed me. It was the quiet permission of a mother who looked the other way, or worse, lent the pen The call came just after midnight. I stared at the screen for a beat, debating whether to pick up. Clarissa Mobile flashed like a dare. I slid my finger across the screen and hit record on my second phone, placing it face down on the table. You think you're clever? Her voice hissed through the receiver, going behind my back, freezing accounts, talking to lawyers. I didn't answer. Silence was safer. You could have just called me, she spat. But no, you had to make a show. Now the banks flagged me. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? In the middle of Eli's tuition payment, they froze it mid-transaction. I pressed the speaker button, letting her voice fill the quiet of my kitchen. I wanted to hear it for what it really was. Fear wrapped in arrogance. You're trying to tear this family apart, she continued. Over what? A few credit cards, some loan you probably forgot you agreed to. Still, I said nothing. Just breathe slow and even. And what's your plan now? Huh? Sue me? Sue your own sister? What would Dad say? What would Mom think if she knew? That last part made me laugh, but not out loud. As if Mom didn't already know, as if she wasn't holding the pen that wrote this script. When it became clear I wasn't going to engage, Clarissa's tone shifted. You always were dramatic. Always needed everything to be fair, to be seen. Newsflash, Mara, not everything is about you. You think you're some martyr. You're not. You're just bitter. The call ended abruptly, as if she realized she'd said too much. Or maybe she hoped the final word would echo longer than the truth. I tapped stop on the recorder and labeled the file. Clarissa 12:08 a.m. evidence was a cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Minutes later, a text from Mom pinged through. Margaret Quinn. Families don't take each other to court. Let's talk. Please don't escalate this. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then turned it face down. No reply. Not now. Maybe. Not ever. The next morning, as I sipped lukewarm tea and tried to clear the storm in my chest, another message came in. This one from a number I didn't recognize. No text, just a photo. I opened it. It was a snapshot of the hallway wall at my parents' house. The gallery of family photos that had hung there since we were kids. Birthdays, graduations, weddings. I counted 5 frames. The 6th one, the one that had always held the photo of me, Clarissa, and Eli at the pumpkin patch, was now a different picture, a newer shot. Clarissa, Eli, and my parents at some resort, all dressed in white, smiling in golden hour light. I wasn't in it. I zoomed in on the frame. My old photo had been replaced. Not just rearranged, removed. Beneath the image, a caption in neat script, Our beautiful family, summer at Stonebrick. I stared at it, unmoving. Then a second message followed. Unknown. I thought you should see what not escalating looks like. No name, but I knew who had sent it. Janice Beck, a neighbor from childhood. One of the only people who ever noticed when I disappeared from a room. The message said everything Mom's hadn't. I'd been erased. And now I was done staying quiet about it. The door to my parents' house creaked open before I even knocked. Mom stood in the doorway, dressed like she was preparing for Sunday brunch. Pearls, lipstick, everything in place but the truth. Mara, she said, voice tight. You didn't have to come all the way. I did, I replied, stepping past her. We're done pretending this is fine. In the living room, Dad sat on the edge of the couch like he was waiting for a dentist appointment. Clarissa was already there, leaning against the fireplace with arms crossed, eyes cold. I placed the folder on the coffee table, thick with printed bank statements, screenshots, copies of forged documents. I sat without invitation. These are yours, I said, pushing the folder forward. Every charge, every loan, every account you used without asking. Clarissa didn't move. Mom flinched like the papers might bite her. I don't know what you're hoping to accomplish with this stunt, Clarissa said. You want money? Is that it? You could have asked. I did, I said flatly. Every time I bailed you out, I asked. Maybe. Not with words, but with silence. And you answered me with more need. Dad shifted, clearing his throat. Maybe we should all take a breath. No, I said. No more breathing rooms, just answers. Clarissa reached for the folder and flipped through the pages with a dramatic sigh. God, Mara, you're still doing the smarter thing, still trying to make everyone feel guilty for not needing you. You didn't just stop needing me, I said. You used me. You used my name, my credit, my history. You made me complicit in your mess, then kicked me out when I became inconvenient. Clarissa stood up straighter, fire flickering behind her eyes. You should have known your place. You were always the extra, the safe one, the one who'd say yes. The background. My chest tightened, but my voice didn't waver. The background paid your bills. The background covered Eli's school when you disappeared on deadlines. The background showed up every time this family forgot how to. Dad finally spoke. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even surprised, just tired. You gave them too much power, Mara. I turned to him, stunned. Excuse me? He rubbed his forehead. You always handled things, always picked up the slack. It became expected. Maybe we let it go too far, Clarissa scoffed. Don't turn this into some we failed Mara intervention. She gave what she wanted to give. She could have said no. I stood slowly, every part of me trembling but grounded. You're right, I said. I could have said no. I should have. But I thought love meant giving without keeping score. Turns out I was just financing your comfort. And Clarissa laughed once, sharp and ugly. You're so dramatic. What? You want applause now? A thank you parade? No, I said, I want my name back. And you? I pointed to her. To the woman who once shared bunk beds and birthday cakes with me. You don't get to use it again. She rolled her eyes. You act like you're finally some big deal. I stepped toward the door. Not big, not loud, just done. Mom's voice cracked behind me. You can't walk away from family. I didn't turn around. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm walking home for the first time. And I left without waiting for permission. The courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Tessa and I sat side by side at the long oak table, our folders aligned, every paperclip placed like a battle formation. Across from us, Clarissa looked more annoyed than nervous. Dressed in muted beige, her lips pressed into a pout that had once gotten her out of speeding tickets and late rent. It wouldn't work here. The clerk called the hearing to order. This wasn't a criminal trial yet, but a petition for full financial disclosure and protective order. Tessa had filed it swiftly. Charges of financial abuse, fraud, and breach of familiar fiduciary trust. A mouthful that in plain terms meant one thing. Clarissa had gone too far and now the law was involved. Tessa stood calmly as she laid out the facts. My client's identity was used without her consent to open 3 credit cards and a personal loan totaling over $87,000. Supporting documentation includes forged signatures, false email addresses, and access to accounts only possible through unauthorized means. She slid the packet forward. We are seeking immediate financial separation and restitution, as well as an audit of Miss Fields's household income and expenditures, especially as it pertains to the care of a minor child, Eli Fields. The judge, a stone-faced woman with tired eyes and a non-nonsense demeanor, turned to Clarissa's attorney. Response. Her lawyer stood, clearing his throat. Your Honor, Miss Fields acknowledges some financial overlap, but maintains that these were informal family arrangements, long-standing habits of shared support. My client did not commit fraud. She merely misunderstood the boundaries. Tessa didn't flinch. Misunderstanding doesn't generate fabricated signatures, Your Honor. The judge nodded slowly. The court will order a full financial review of Ms. Fields' household, including documentation of expenses related to the child's well-being. Until such time, no further use of joint credit or co-signed funds shall continue. Clarissa shifted in her seat, face flushing. She whispered something to her lawyer, who shook his head slightly. She Wasn't used to losing ground. A week later, Tessa and I received the audit documents Clarissa had submitted. We sat across from each other in her office, highlighters in hand. "She's bold," Tessa muttered, flipping pages. Hair appointments, spa treatments, facial fillers, a lease on a luxury car. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" I nodded. Not a single grocery bill, not one school supply receipt. Tessa held up a printout. $500 monthly for organic meal plans. None for Eli. These are personal luxury choices, not childcare necessities. My eyes caught something on the next page. A 3-night reservation at a seaside resort 2 towns over. Listed as a self-care weekend. "She used my name to buy rest," I said quietly. While I couldn't sleep for months, wondering if I'd helped enough. Tessa placed the file down and looked at me. Her voice even. "You didn't just help, Mara. You carried. And now we're going to make sure you're not the one paying for it anymore." The phone rang. Another parent from school needing to reschedule a conference. Life outside the courtroom was still moving, still demanding. But in that moment, a small flicker of something warm caught in my chest. Not victory, not yet, but clarity. And that was enough to keep going. 2 weeks after the audit, the court issued an interim order. I was granted temporary guardianship of Eli pending further review. The email came late on a Tuesday evening. And for a full minute, I just stared at the screen, heart pounding like it. Didn't know how to process what it meant. It wasn't victory, not yet. But wore mismatched shirts and wiped icing on their jeans. They played tag between the trees and tried to dunk each other with water balloons. One girl shrieked as a cupcake exploded in her lap, and Eli laughed so hard he nearly fell over. I hadn't heard that laugh in years. During cake time, I lit 11 candles on a chocolate sheet cake from the grocery store. No fondant, no edible photo, just extra sprinkles. As we sang, Eli looked around the table and whispered, "I didn't think anyone would come. You showed up," I said, "and that's more than enough reason for others, too." After the cake, we opened presents. Most were small puzzles, action figures, a used copy of a dinosaur encyclopedia. But when he reached my gift wrapped in green paper with a black ribbon, he paused. His fingers trembled slightly as he opened the box. A soft gasp. "The green one," he whispered, lifting the Remotech-controlled helicopter out with reverence. "You remembered?" "Of course I did," I said. He held it like it was fragile, eyes wide. "I only pointed to it once in that catalog at the doctor's office." "I remember everything you love," I said, kneeling beside him. One of his classmates nudged another and whispered, "I've never seen him smile like this." Eli heard it, too. He looked up at me and mouthed, "Really?" I nodded. Later, as the sun dipped low and the last of the kids were picked up, Eli sat on the grass, helicopter in his lap, cheeks still sticky with frosting. "This was the best birthday ever," he said softly. "It wasn't fancy," I said. "It was real," he replied. And that was the revolution. The Monday after the party, I found an envelope wedged between the pages of Eli's birthday card stack. No return address, no message, just my name in careful cursive sealed with a piece of tape like someone had closed it in a hurry. Inside was a check, $500. Signed by Damon, my cousin, Clarissa's favorite ally. The memo line read for